A special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Parents of Reddit, what has your child done to make you think they lived a past life? My 3-year-old said, I was your mom in heaven, multiple times. When I was 6 weeks pregnant with her, my mom died unexpectedly the day she found out the secret that I was pregnant at 40, with what would be her last and 21st grandchild. We were going to surprise her on her 75th birthday, 2 weeks later, but a niece let the secret out. When my girl was 4, we were looking through pictures boxes. I have no family pictures posted in my house. Later that night, I realized my girl took 3 pictures of my mom and put them in her room. She's never seen pictures of my mom before. I asked her why she took those pictures, and she said, because I'm pretty. My grandmother passed away about 10 years ago. We were very close, and my whole life she always told me that she would be my guardian angel after she died. When my daughter was about 3, she had terrible night terrors and would have a hard time going to sleep. I would spend the evenings with her, comforting her to help her get to sleep, reading books, talking to her, etc. One night, we were talking about what do you want to be when you grow up. She kept telling me that she used to be a grown-up. After prying and asking what she meant, she told me that when she was a grown-up, she used to be my grandma. She then told me a story about when I was young, I had an accident and was burned when helping her cook dinner. It's something that I never told her, but did actually happen. It completely creeped me out at first, and she has never really mentioned anything else like that since. I've posted this before, but my daughter, right before she turned 5, was in our hall in the middle of the night, still asleep, whimpering and crying. I got her to come lay down with me, and when I asked her what the dream was, she got very upset and said, it wasn't a dream I remembered. She told me she remembered when she was a bad dog, and they made her go to sleep. I asked her about it again later, and she got very upset, said she was a bad dog and started crying saying she didn't want to remember it again. She has no idea what it means to put a dog down, let alone that it is what happens to bad dogs. I've told this one on Reddit before. My son was 3 at the time. We were at a ceramics place, and I was taking a wool throwing lesson when he said to this lady, I saw you in the fire. Did it hurt when you got burned? I was there, but I couldn't help you. She turned white as a sheet, and explained to me that when she was a young girl, her house caught fire and she was badly burned. She told me that used to tell her family, that she followed a little boy, she'd never seen, out of her room and then out of the burning house. She is sure that my son is her guardian angel, and that he was sent to tell her this as an older lady, to make sure always remembers. We became pretty good friends, until we moved away. My son is now 16, and doesn't remember much about this, other than he has faint memories of her. When my sister was 3, she would go on and on about her brother, Brian. We're all girls, and we don't know where she would have heard the name. But it was all, Brian does this, Brian and me used to do that, on and on. Thinking Brian was an imaginary friend, I asked her where Brian was now. She said he's dead, I am, too. The bomb got us and our house is gone. Very weird. My son went for over a year, talking about his other mommy and daddy, with a completely straight and serious face. We have a blended family, so he has me, mom, and at his father's house his dad, stepmom, and brother. He said he had 2 fake mommies and a fake daddy, and then a set of real ones. When trying to get clarification, thinking he was having trouble adapting to new family roles, he informed us that we were the fakes and that his real parents were much older, lived far away on a farm, with his older brother. That story came up off and on, as well as weird side statements from him. We had him at the ER one time, in a private room. He hears voices outside which he normally wouldn't pay any mind to. He perked up, looked at the door, and goes, that sounded like my real mommy's voice. He was very excited and animated about it. My kid is usually pretty deadpan, so that was off too. I decided to just ride it out, but admittedly it did freak me out at first. He hasn't done it in a while. So I am raised Roman Catholic. My son is raised Roman Catholic. But I was dating this Muslim guy, who would play prayers constantly. This particular day, my boyfriend was playing a prayer that's supposed to protect you from jinn. My 3-year-old son looked up from his coloring book. Said clear as day, "Now they will be gone for 1,000 days. My boyfriend looked him dead in the eye and was like, "How do you know that?" My son smiled, shrugged, and continued to color. I don't know if this is true, but my boyfriend explained that if you recited that specific prayer, it was supposed to banish evil spirits for 1,000 days. To this day, I still get chills when I think about it. My mother was also super freaked, cause I told her daddy used to be my baby, but I drowned when he was my size. I was 4, my grandfather drowned when my dad was 4. My daughter was 3 or 4, she kept asking me, "Mommy, do you remember when you were little and I was big? I took good care of you, we went to the store all the time." Then when her little brother was born, she asked me if she could call him Augie, pronounced Augie. I asked her where she heard that name, and she told me that she made it up. My great-grandfather passed away August 31st of 2001, she was born September 7th of 2011. My great-grandfather used to take me to King Soopers a few times a week, and he had a dog, long before I was born, named Augie, nickname for August. Had a hard time wrapping my brain around it. When my oldest son was 3, he used to wake up crying and saying that he wanted to go home. Over and over, he would repeat it. I would reassure him that everything was okay, he was at home. Happens for many months. We had a huge map of the world in the hallway, and one night when he was upset, I took him to the map and showed him where we lived and asked where his other home was. He pointed out a small town in Mexico. Day after day he pointed to the same exact place. So, we took him there. It was a beautiful little area and we had a great time. There was nothing profound in any of his reactions. When we got home, he started sleeping through the night and never mentioned it again. We live in California and my husband and I are both white. However, our son is adopted and although his bio father is technically unknown, we were told it is probable that he was Hispanic. I asked my son once who he was before he was my son. He was small, maybe 3. He looked at me sadly and said, "It was dark and cold and I wasn't anything. Just all by myself." And then he perked up and said, "And before that I had black wings and I flew. And I'd take shiny stuff because all shiny things are mine." And that is how I realized my son was Magpie in his past life. And gave me a clue where to find my missing earrings. He had a hidden cache of jewelry in his room, the little imp. More things than I will ever be able to explain. His old birthdays, his dear departed wife's old birthdays, this 2-year-old baby was inconsolable, that he didn't get her, his wife, something for her birthday, which he remembered. This is a very very small sample. I spent 6 years splitting time between now and years ago. He remembered old family members, and 1,000 things that no one would believe. Also a few years ago, he was maybe 6, he said, "You know Mom, I think it's pretty cool, you are born and get to live and then you get to do it all again." My friend had a miscarriage, before she had her first daughter. A few years ago, when her daughter was about 4, a group of us were at a party and her daughter was sitting on her lap, and said something along the lines of, "I'm sorry I left you before Mommy. I was hurting really bad and I wasn't ready." My friend asked her what she meant, and her daughter said she left her before she was born, but came back. Super creepy. Daughter doesn't remember this conversation, and still doesn't know about the miscarriage. When my youngest daughter was 3 years old, she would very often get upset, and insist I help her find her kids, because they needed her. She said she was in a car accident and died, but her 2 children in the back seat survived, and needed her. By the time she was 5, she no longer remembered, but for almost 2 years, she had an intense drive to find her kids, and let them know that their mommy was okay. My son, now 3, has been terrified of sharks since he could talk. He loves water, loves taking baths and the pool, but freaked out on his first beach trip after my wife took him into the water. He started screaming about the sharks, and she brought him back to our little spot. This was last summer, and the odd thing is we had no idea how he could have known that sharks are predators and are something to be scared of. When we asked him why he was so afraid of them, he said, "They bit my leg off. I could feel their tongue with my foot." Also, a few weeks ago, my wife was going through pictures and showed him one of her at her elementary school. She said, "See, that's where I went to school when I was young." Without hesitation he said, "I know, I was watching you," to which my wife replied, "You were watching me? Where were you watching me from?" My son points to our skylight, all the way up there. According to my parents, I did something like this when I was about 2 years old. We were in a waiting area of a restaurant, and I indicated to them that I wanted to be put on the bench of a piano that was against one wall. Apparently I pressed a few keys to test what was what, then went into perfect playing posture, only pausing when I realized that my foot didn't reach the pedals. After dinner, they asked me whether I had ever played a piano before, and I replied, "Oh, yeah, I played it when I was a man." Not a parent, but my mom told me this story. When she was in law school, her mother, my grandmother, bought her a string of pearls. My mother continued to wear this same string of pearls long after graduation and long after my grandmother died. My grandmother died 2 days after I was born, in the same hospital. She got the chance to hold me once, during which time my father swears she transferred her soul into me. One night when I was about 3 or 4, I crawled into my mother's lap. She was wearing her pearls and I reached up to touch them. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I got these for you before I was born." Then I went back to playing. My mom says she still gets goosebumps when she thinks about that story. I also inherited my grandmother's love of the Packers despite never having lived in Green Bay. My son used to be terrified to go to sleep. He would ask me repeatedly if he would wake up. For just over a year, from when he was almost 3 to a bit over age 4, he would talk about how last time, when he was a baby, he went to sleep but didn't wake up. And he'd talk about how sad it was. And how he would miss me if he didn't wake up. He would repeat this every other night, but sometimes would give no details, and other times he would give me more details. He was so little, the details were hard to get. He would say he loved me and would never forget me. He'd be surprised in the morning and very excited that he woke up this time. He'd comment about techniques to make sure he woke up, which were very strange kid things like, "Remember my toy truck?" It was really sad. He's 7 now and remembers nothing. He was 3, and we were in the car. He said, "Daddy, do you remember when we used to be brothers?" His dad played along, and said that he didn't remember that, and my son said, "Yeah, I was the big brother and our mommy died, so I went to work to take care of you. You told me that someday you would take care of me, and now you are my daddy." He's done other things that indicate some type of intuition, or past life, like tell his stepmom that her dad died of smoking, lung cancer, and describe him perfectly. He had never seen a photo of the dad, and didn't know anything about him. The stepmother and her father were estranged and she never spoke of him.